Well, as you can see, we pretty much lost everything. And it got so hot it melted our computers and phones.
It was a sickening feeling to know that a small office like that could be burnt down so quickly and so badly.
Well, it was kind of a shock and awe.
Yeah, it's been a tragedy in a small town, and people was just horrified that somebody would burn the sheriff's office.
He literally was standing on the sidewalk outside the burned out sheriff's office under a tent.
That's why if it wasn't for the Sheriff's Association, I don't know how I'd function.
The response from the sheriffs was no different than I would have expected.
They've been a blessing to Graham County.
In the wintertime, we have about 9,000 to 10,000 people, just your locals. Then in the summertime, we have it might go up to about 12,000. And a lot of motorcycles come through to ride the Cherry-Halo Skyway. So we have a lot of tourists. 80% of our county is owned by the Forest Service. So it's just not a very big tax bracket. So that's why we try to make life hard on the drug dealers and use their money and their vehicles to kind of support and run our office and take the burden off the taxpayers.
You know, the sheriff's office is a very important thing to have, especially when you're as isolated as Graham County is. I mean, you know, you look around, you're way out in the country, and drugs have been a real problem here. And Sheriff Moody has really, he's gone to war on that, and he's done a good job.
May the 17th, around 2:30 in the morning, I received a call from dispatch. Basically, they woke me up and said, "Hey, Sheriff, your office is on fire." And I'm like, "What? What do you mean my office?" They're like, "Yeah, your office is on fire." And I'm like, "Well, I'm on my way." So I rolled into town just a few minutes later, and the Graham County Fire Department was there on scene, and it was just rolling in smoke coming out the windows and the doors. I'm thinking, my goodness, you know. And the first thing I thought is, you know, surely somebody's not done this. The next morning when daylight came, we went in and we just saw it was bad. You know, it was just gutted. I mean, we took a lot of people to jail and took a lot of money and a lot of vehicles from people, and we used that money to build this office up, and people in the community were so proud of this office from the change. And so it's just a lot of work and money down the drain. Of course, we were all just kind of devastated and in shock.
I initially went over just to see what we could do and assess what damages he had and what assistance that we could offer.
Some of the neighboring sheriffs come by to lend their support.
Well, it's important that the sheriffs stick together all the time, but especially in a time of need when we never know when it's going to strike home.
As the men were pulling out burnt files and all of the furniture and stuff, there was just a steady stream of people coming up, offer their support.
As the day went on Monday, we started salvaging some of our stuff out of the office and didn't have anywhere to go. The acting county manager come over and said, "Hey, Sheriff, you know, what can I do?" And I'm like, "Well, you know, we got to have somewhere to go." So they brought a travel trailer up and set it up. And of course, there's no room for my officers to work out of a travel trailer. We didn't even use it. So Tuesday rolled around and we went to our local church come by. Actually, my mom come by and saw us sitting on the sidewalk. She's like, "Hey, you know, can I bring y'all a tent from the church and some tables?" I'm like, "Yeah, that'd be great." Well, literally, people were pulling up. It was like, "Hey, you know, is this where we report something?" We're like, "Yeah, you know, what's going on?"
You could see the files out there, and you could see the deputies under tents. I was very disappointed that our men had to work in those situations.
It was kind of breathtaking to hear that a sheriff in North Carolina was having to operate off the sidewalk.
Wednesday rolled around, and I felt like nobody was really doing anything. I wasn't getting anywhere, and no phones, no computers, lost all our surveillance equipment. But I was literally standing on the sidewalk when I called Eddie Caldwell.
Sheriff Moody left me a brief voicemail message that said he was standing on the sidewalk with nowhere to go. That was a dramatic sort of visual picture in my mind of how that could be, but it was also even more dramatic when he mentioned that the fire had occurred in the early morning hours on Monday, and his call to me was at midday on Wednesday.
And Eddie more or less said, "I'll have you off the sidewalk in 24 hours.
One of the first questions I asked was whether or not there was any building available that he could rent on a short-term basis, and he had already made some calls to some local business folks and others and identified a outstanding option in a vacant Wachovia Bank building.
So when Eddie rolled into town, we got up with the owners and sat down and talked about money and what they'd have to have.
This building was move-in ready. Each officer has their own computers, they have their own phones, to where in the old office we didn't have that. So it's very fortunate that we're able to have this.
And one of the things that was critical in finding a new facility for the Graham County Sheriff's Office is someplace where their evidence could be secured so they wouldn't have to continually run back and forth to Jackson County to get it.
He made true to his word. I was off the sidewalk the next day by lunchtime. We were moving into this facility.
And then throughout the day, Sheriff's Office personnel from across the state, from the coast to the Piedmont, to the Triad, the Triangle, the Charlotte metro area, and all through the mountains, everybody rallied to the call to provide furniture and equipment. Copy machines, fax machines, desks, chairs, file cabinets, you name it, and somebody provided it. This was truly a statewide partnership, not only between the sheriffs of North Carolina who rallied to the call, but also several very important businesses. I contacted Brad King, who's the CEO of Loan Source. He immediately asked one of his staff members to put together all the office supplies that the sheriff's office could possibly need for the next month or two.
And this is where the county had their servers for their phones and computers back here in the back. They lost all their computers and phones, and when they were down and didn't have any phones or computers, Sheriff's Association, I was up in 2 days with computers and phones and internet.
I can check their file if you'll give me just a second, okay?
A truly Herculean effort by the FeatureTel employees who worked through the evening and through the night to be sure that we got the phones we needed so we could get en route to Graham County and to get the phone service rerouted so that when the phones were plugged in, this phone service came back up. We also knew that all of the computers in the Graham County Sheriff's Office were gone. I called Ken George, who's the CEO of NetSmart. He immediately got on the phone with a number of his customers. He knew several who had just put in new computers and had one generation back computers that were available, and numerous businesses throughout the Raleigh area donated computers. Ken and his staff worked literally through the night that Wednesday evening, refurbishing the computers, reprogramming them, and getting them ready to go. Ken stayed with me up there Thursday, Friday, and we left Saturday evening, coming back late Saturday night. And he worked almost around the clock in installing computers and the telephones and configuring the servers and all the technical things it takes to get the sheriff's office up and running.
I mean, we just lost everything. I mean, we just started from scratch, and I mean, in 2 days, Eddie had everything we needed to function.
The Highway Patrol was particularly helpful. Sheriff Moody, when he called me, he and his personnel had been out on the street guarding their evidence for almost 48 hours at that point. And they were exhausted, and talked to the colonel of the Highway Patrol. He immediately sent a trooper and then another trooper over to stand guard and preserve the crime scene and preserve the evidence so that Sheriff Moody and his personnel could go home and get some rest.
But the fire started back here in the back in the narcotics office. We really needed this facility because not only were we trying to get off the sidewalk and to get back up and running to take care of our community, we're also trying to go after this Scott Mitchell Turpin, the guy that allegedly set the fire. My narcotics officer said that he had heard from one of the informants that this guy wanted to know specifically where we kept our evidence. And of course, it was in their office, which is where the fire started. And basically, my officer stopped him and took a pound of marijuana off of him. Of course, he was on federal probation. He was worried about going back to prison, and basically made the comment he wasn't going back to prison. But that's the door they think that allegedly he either sprayed with a garden sprayer or poured in gas. And then we had an air conditioning unit right there, and apparently he shoved that out because the air conditioning unit was on the inside. He shoved it to the inside to ventilate the fire. And so our informant said that he was asking about where we kept our evidence, and there was a door right here. If you'll come in, this is the narcotics side. This was the gun safe that we had his pound of marijuana in. So we were all kind of grinning from ear to ear when we opened it, and we found his bag of marijuana in there, and we pulled it out, and it was fine. At that point, I didn't care if everything else was burned except for that 1 pound of marijuana. But I think had we not had this facility and had our computers and phones, I think it would have been a whole lot worse on us, and it took us a lot longer to be able to arrest this guy.
The initial request for us was to assist with the arson investigation because we do have arson agents and that is one of our primary missions, and we're doing that. We also worked with the Sheriff's Office to come up with a plan to secure the evidence until it could be placed in their new vault.
Sheriff Ashley let them borrow one of his travel trailers, and they come out and helped us for hours secure this evidence because you had to bring it out piece by piece, log it.
Every sheriff in the state, I believe, has called and stepped up and said, you know, what assistance you need, what can we do? And I think that's going to continue until the crisis is over.
Not one person, whether in the business community, whether in the sheriff's offices, or whether in a state agency, not one person said, well, I can't help you or I can't help you until next week.
So it's important for us to reach out to each other to help in a time of need, and that's why I think not only did all the sheriffs and other local law enforcement, but state agencies as well were willing to do whatever it took to get him in a position to fulfill his mission.
And now I understand and realize what the Sheriff Association is all about and what they do, because hey, I might be a little mountain sheriff, but I've got 99 other sheriffs that's willing to do whatever they got to do to make sure I'm taken care of. And they've done that. And it showed my community what the Sheriff Association is all about. And people are just amazed.
That's such a great thing that counties would work together and this association would take care of its own that way, because we failed to do so in our county. I mean, we didn't take action quick enough to help them. And they were, I mean, just like that.
He needed to be up and running as soon as possible, and I think the Sheriff's Association made that possible, and I appreciate that.
When they are events that we all need to work together on, the Sheriff's Association, through good leadership and good coordination, and I think good sheriffs step up and help wherever that we need to or where we can.
All 100 sheriffs in the state of North Carolina are a brotherhood, and we look after one another.
I mean, it's actually a blessing in disguise. I think it's brought our community closer together, and the community knows that you know, we've made a hard stand on the drug problem here in our community. And it's also showed them that hey, you know, the sheriffs across the state, they're going to take care of one another. And the association and what it does has just been tremendous.